Hi, my name is Jessine, and I'm starting this YouTube channel because I felt inspired to start this for the last couple of years, but I haven't really been in a place to create such content because I've been going through such a rebirth and a redefining of myself, my perception of myself and my reality. I hardly know really where to start. There's so much that's happened in the last couple of years. Well, the last like 7 years especially, maybe my whole lifetime. But there's so much I want to share that I feel will offer value to people who maybe are facing a lot of the similar challenges with the constructs of society and who want to live a different type of life, a different lifestyle, who want to feel alive. So my Instagram's name is Just Real Jess, and I chose that name when I went through my first divorce. I've been through two, and I was married for 2.5 years for both, or was in those partnerships for 2.5 to 3 years each. And so obviously I got married really young. I got married at 18 years old, 2 months out of high school. And there's a lot that goes into why that happened, why I made those choices, what influenced me to believe that that was what I was supposed to do. Which the point of these videos would be to share that over time, because there's a lot, and I think that a lot of people can relate. So I was raised Christian. I was born into a family of 13 kids, so I was the 13th of that family. I have a twin brother, so my twin was 2 minutes older than me. So he and I were the babies of that family, but hardly the babies in the terms of what that usually entails. I have 3 nieces my same age. So I had a sister that already had a baby, and then while my mom was pregnant with me, my second sister got married. So within a year after I was born, I had 2 other nieces born from my 2 different sisters. So I grew up with a lot of babies. So it was my twin brother and my 3 nieces. It was like 5 of us babies, plus my brother 3 years older, and then all the babies to come. So I now have like 53, I think, nieces and nephews. So I'm from a huge family, and most of my siblings got married really, really young. It was just very normal. My sisters all got married under the age of 21, I think. 22 was the oldest. Majority of them got married at like 18 or 19. My mom got married at 19. My grandma got married at like 16 or something. So culturally and religiously, it was very expected and encouraged to get married really young, and that was kind of my purpose in life, was to be a wife and a mother, and to not really pursue a career and become my own individual person outside of this family dynamic, which is beautiful in certain ways. I love family and I'm so grateful for my family, but being raised with those belief systems really genuinely caused a lot of limitations in my mind of my capabilities to stand on my own as an individual and be my own person and pursue a career. There was a lot that happened throughout my life that shaped my reality. I'm now, having gone through my second divorce, realizing that I want to be my own standing person. I've started my own business the last few years. by myself. So during my first marriage, when I got married at 18, the reason I chose to marry that man was because of his drive and intelligence and his abilities in entrepreneurship. Really, I was like, wow, if I marry this person, then I could be successful. I could create what I want to create. Because I remember being 10 years old at my dad's funeral when my father died unexpectedly in a car accident. I'm processing this trauma of my dad dying, and I'm still finding the best in the situation. And I remember speaking at his funeral and saying, like, every person was born with unique talents and gifts and a purpose in this world. And no matter what we go through in our lives, we have what we need to contribute to the tapestry of life, the grand masterpiece of creation. And my beautiful mother really taught me that principle. But what my mom didn't teach me was how to fully process pain. I learned at a really young age to suppress pain, to suppress anger, and to pretend I'm okay, to act like everything is fine when I'm not okay, when I'm hurting and when I'm in pain. And so from a really young age, I started self-sacrificing and suppressing how I really felt about things so that those around me could feel okay, so that everyone around me could feel good. I would always just slap a huge smile on my face and like try to make it okay, whatever was wrong or didn't resonate with me, and I wouldn't stand up for myself. And this is what we call a generational belief system. I think that I would prefer having been taught to be strong and powerful and to push through hard times over playing victim and getting stuck. So I'm grateful for what I was taught in this, but what I've come to realize is that we are evolving as a consciousness, as individuals, for our families, generationally. Each generation's responsibility is to learn and evolve and develop further consciousness to expand and grow and become a greater version of our parents and those before us. So a lot of the way that I think now is to challenge myself, challenge my perception of reality and what is what and how to respond in situations. I'm an emotional health practitioner now. I went on to study in school to become an emotional health practitioner after I went through my traumas, and at such a young age, when I was like 23 going through I think I was 24 by then, my second divorce, I was like, okay, there's a pattern here. Like, this is obviously something that I'm repeating, something that there's something that's not resonating. There's a lesson I need to learn here to shift. And that was when I realized that this was a deeper trauma, something that went really deep. And I then went back into my younger ages and started really studying what I went through in these younger ages and how I formed my perception of reality. A lot of people in society just think that life is a certain way based on the way that they were taught, the constructs they were taught in their individual families, in their cultures and religions, and then in their like larger societies. And they just accept that as reality, and that's all that there is. In actuality, your perception of reality is what you operate in and what you're responding to, and you create your reality by how you're responding. So what I started to realize was if I wanted to create another reality, I had to shift the way I was perceiving life situations and responding to them. What I then realized was that we are not this absolute maxed, like solid, frozen personality and stuck that way and forever that way. It is so sunny right here. Oh my gosh, it was shady and now it's sunny. But it's okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm like dying from the sun. Maybe I should relocate. Come with me. Oh, it's so much better. Okay, sometimes we just have to readjust, and that's okay. I'm just gonna keep going. Oh, I'm so sweaty. Oh, okay. Okay. So, back to what I was saying. I think I needed to be a little further. Okay. So, in my studies of psychology and how the brain works, and quantum physics, how we're manifesting from the energy realm, the spiritual dimension, the fifth dimension, into the third dimension, the physical realm, what we know now in our tangible reality, touch and matter, is energy and information create reality. Everything exists as energy and information first. Well, we form our belief systems, which is thought patterns and emotional reactive patterns, when we're under the ages of 6. So from the moment you're conceived, you're absorbing and feeling and receiving the energy around you, even in your mother's womb, and bringing that into your senses through your reticular activating system and formulating that filter of how you perceive reality, and making a decision about yourself and the world around you and how you fit into it. This, along with the energy you're feeling, you either absorb as your own or you react to it. And so when we have these thought patterns, when we form these little neural pathways and parts of our brain, we cause this emotional reactive chemical. So when our body releases this emotion and energy, which is this chemical that runs through our body in response to the thought. Well, the thought and the emotion then create a behavior pattern. And our behavior pattern is our habits, it's all of our unconscious actions, our unconscious thoughts, our behaviors that we're not even thinking about. And these can be micro little habits all the way up to huge patterns of behavior throughout our life patterns. So the way that, and this is like our coping mechanisms, this is the way that we make ourselves feel better for what we're perceiving reality to be and how it's making us feel. So there's so much that I'll share throughout time, but ultimately this programming is formed, the blueprint of it is formed under the age of 6. From 7 to 13, it's solidified, and it's basically wired into existence that this is just life, this is just reality, and this is how it is. And then from 13 on, we develop what's called the ego. And the ego really isn't just like someone that's prideful. That's just one of the states of consciousness within ego. Ego is really your programming. It's your persona. It's just this individual that I've developed myself to be, how I perceive myself. It's how you perceive yourself. Your ego is your identity. And we've been taught generationally to identify with our thoughts and feelings and behaviors as self, as who we are. Well, this is very limited because the ego is limited. The ego is of the limited mind. And so when we are operating in the limited mind, we create a limited reality. Well, my goal is to become limitless, and to expand and explore and grow and excitedly embrace the unknown so that I can create what I really want. Because anything that you genuinely resonate with that's not already in your reality, that you're not already experiencing, is in the unknown. And ego is very afraid of the unknown. Ego rejects the unknown and repeats patterns. And that's what why we develop these behavior patterns. We don't expand. And so the whole point of me sharing all of this and being so vulnerable with my experiences and going through marriage and divorce multiple times so young is to exemplify to you that your past does not define you. It's not who you are. It's just what you subscribed to as reality that you tried to fit yourself into. And for me, I tried to hyper commit to this concept of monogamy and getting married really quickly and really young before I had had a chance to fully develop myself as an individual, because that's what I was taught. And not that is me not taking accountability for my actions, because I so very much believe in accountability. It is how we embrace our power. I 100% made those choices, but I still made those choices based off my programming versus my authentic self, who I genuinely truly am, which is a consciousness, a soul, a spirit much greater and larger than this persona. And the states of consciousness of ego resonate within, well, the way that this is measured is through hertz. But there's the states of consciousness of shame, which calibrates at 20 hertz, up through pride at 175 hertz. And within that range, there's several states of consciousness. And so that goes shame, guilt, apathy, fear, grief, desire, anger, pride. And those are the states of consciousness of the ego. And in these states of consciousness, it's of the negative energy field. And when you're living within these states of consciousness and you're perceiving reality through these lenses and patterns of belief systems, you're going to feel like you're going to feel exhausted and like you're just trying to force for what you want. And you're going to feel a separation from yourself and others. And so when I started studying all of this, I realized that ultimately the way that I was operating wasn't me. It was just what I was programmed with, which allowed me to go into a state of courage, which calibrates at 200 hertz. But this is the first state of consciousness of higher self, of our most authentic self. And this is of the first state of consciousness or dimension of the positive energy field and of power. And when we're in the state of courage, it's not the most lovely, pleasant, peaceful state. It's a state of courage. You have to have the bravery to look at your patterns, to look at yourself, to look at the way that you're operating and what you're creating, and take accountability for that. And you have to be able to transcend the ego, the individual persona, and not need to protect your persona, so that you can fully process all of these patterns, thoughts, and feelings that are creating these behaviors and therefore creating your life patterns. So this is a journey that I started a few years ago when I first started brain balancing at a health center called Vitania. Up until that point, I had done vision boards and gone to seminars and motivational speaker events, and I had these dreams and visions and ideas, and I had read a few books here and there. I didn't think I was a very good reader, so I didn't read very much. I was in my first marriage. I owned a fitness company with my first husband. I was trying really hard. I had a lot of intuitive knowings and inspiration, but I was still very stuck and believing every thought and feeling to be reality, and so therefore reacting and trying to survive. And I was in survival mode, which when we're in survival mode, we create more experiences that propel that state of being, survival. You're continually stuck in survival mode. This electromagnetic feedback or therapy I received during brain balancing. I received treatment for probably about 4 or 5 months when I was like, the lights came on and things started really shifting. I started seeing like a spiritual guide, life coach, got my chakras balanced. I was like, what are chakras? What is that? That's weird. Got my first crystals. I was like, this is weird, but it helps because the panic attacks were so intense. I was struggling in my second marriage. I could feel these patterns repeating. I could feel my husband, Trenton, and I just going back and forth in this ego dancing. And I'm like, I could see it. I was like, not happy. I was like, this is not good. How do I get out of this? How do I change this? And I fought really hard for that relationship for another 2 years because I really wanted to figure it out. But ultimately, we decided to end that relationship when we realized how deep we were and that our foundation was laid in these patterns, and our egos and our personas and our individual stories and coping mechanisms were plugged into each other, and we were projecting onto each other. And it's very hard to break out of that while you're both in that dynamic and situation all the time, when you're both not completely willing to let it go and find another way. So that was happening, and I think one of us would step into this willing state, and then the other wouldn't, and then we'd take turns, and it was just this kind of perpetuating pattern. And so both of us in the end, after like splitting up, getting back together 5 different times. I was so scared to go through my second divorce. I did not want to after having gone through my first. My first was so hard, and I felt very judged and very, very alone and very hopeless at that point. And I didn't want to go through that again. And so I fought really hard, and I was very madly in love with my second husband. Well, for what I could have understood of love, what I perceived love to be, I was definitely attached. And this is what ego is. When we're in ego, we experience desire and attachment. And it's not very often that we reside in this state of consciousness of love with our partner. And if you want more info on that, you should check out the book Attachment. I'll have to check the author's name, but I know the last name's Levine. I'm trying to remember the first name, but maybe I'll put it in the comments or something. And then Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force, and then his other book he wrote 10 years later. So the first one he wrote in 2002, and then the other one he wrote 10 years later after 10 more years of research. It's called Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. He wrote that one in 2012. And that one's amazing. And it's a much easier book to digest and process. Those 3 books would be very, very helpful for you if you are experiencing this right now. And just know that you're not alone, and there is a way to break out of patterns with your partner if you're in attachment styles. So when we're in ego and we're not fully aligned with ourselves and tapping into our higher self on a daily basis through practices like meditation and mindfulness and health and processing skills, we haven't developed those skills yet, and emotional intelligence, then we're likely playing out these patterns of attachment, which we formed in the way that we bonded to our parent as a child. So it's often with the mother, but it can also be with the father. So my father almost died when I was 6 months old in a head-on collision. He survived, but when I was 6 months old, he was all of a sudden gone, and he was in a hospital and not really there for a little while during those crucial first couple of years of bonding. So psychologically, my mother became my father and my mother in my subconscious. And then 9.5 more years later, when I was 10, my dad died in a car accident, and then he was gone. And he was no longer in this dimension, in the physical dimension, and so gone from my reality. And I coped by being hyper spiritual, dove deeper into the Christian religion I was in. I was in a very devout Christian family, and we practiced very, very specific standards and lifestyle, and so I just gave everything to that to cope with that trauma of death at such a young age. And my mother became the role of my mother and my father, and my mother had to cope in her own ways with the trauma of losing her husband and trying to raise 6 more kids by herself at home, let alone all of her other children who were already on their own. And I'll get into this in another video, but ultimately I developed what's called an avoidant attachment style, where there's 3 main attachment styles. There's avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, and then a secure attachment, which is really more just like a connection, a pure connection. When we're in an attachment, we are codependent. We depend on the other person's happiness in order for us to be happy. We're not able to be interdependently happy and functional and share in a connection with this other person. And so I really wanted to make my mom happy. I really didn't want her to hurt, and I felt so sad and bad that she was in so much pain with my dad's death. And so being this little 10-year-old, I didn't really let myself fully process the abandonment that I felt, and the sorrow and the anger and the pain, and I suppressed it. And so when we're developing our brain and we're developing who we are and how we operate in the world, and we develop, there's like little floaties everywhere. We develop these coping mechanisms. So the coping mechanism I developed with very severe pain was suppression and even repression. Repression is when it is just in your subconscious. It never comes into your conscious awareness, the negative emotion, before it's repressed back down. And suppression is when it comes into your conscious awareness and then pressed back down. I experienced a lot of repression with anger, and then suppression as well. And when this is happening, it drops our state of conscious into what's called apathy, which calibrates at like 50 hertz, I believe. It's like a really heavy frequency. Maybe it's even 40 hertz. It's a very heavy frequency in comparison to like love, which calibrates at 528 hertz. So when we're in that state, we're numbing how we really feel. That's the process we'll recreate over and over and over again throughout our life. So at any point throughout our life, when we feel those negative emotions of anger and pain and sorrow, we'll suppress it and we'll go into apathy and we feel numb, which means we'll try to rely on logic of what we think we should do and who we should be to handle our life situations and respond to them. And we may suppress how we really feel and not communicate clearly with the other people that we're sharing the life experience with. And therefore we can't honor ourselves and others cannot honor us. And when this happens, we develop resentment. And resentment is just anger that wasn't spoken out. And it causes, that resentment will seep out of us in one way or another at some point. And it causes a lot of problems in relationships, especially if we have, and it will fuel attachment behavior patterns like anxious or avoidant attachment, which causes lots of problems in relationships. And codependent relationships are very, very exhausting. And that's what was happening in my marriages. So I have, I think I'm gonna wrap this video up because it's getting really long. And I'm gonna start sharing these like probably every day, 5 days a week. And I'm gonna keep them short, like 15 minutes. I'll try to. But I'll go into depth on all of this. But basically, I've been spending the last couple of years studying relationships with a lot of information and science to back it and psychology to support it, and really experimenting with different types of relationships, different lifestyles. So one of the main lifestyle switch that I've been experimenting with and studying is called polyamory, and it's ethical non-monogamy, basically. And there's all different forms of it, and I've been trying to understand and explore these different forms, and I've read a couple books on it, and I've been practicing it since last October. And it was kind of an accident. It kind of came unexpectedly. I wasn't looking for it. It just kind of fell upon me, and I was like, whoa, what do we have here? What is this new situation I find myself in? And instead of being afraid of it and running away from it or judging myself and going into, judgment, I wanted to understand what I was experiencing and why and how it worked and what the options were of executing this new experience. So ultimately, what the point of me sharing these videos is to more vulnerably express myself authentically. Just Real Jess is the name of my Instagram, because I want to be real. I want to be authentic. I want to be free to be me, and I want to be honest in who I am and what I really genuinely feel and think, which are two separate things. And I want to create a life that I absolutely deeply resonate with, and really show people that that's possible, because when we're living authentically, we're expressing ourselves totally honestly and authentically. That is when we're able to communicate clearly with those we share reality with. People can trust us more because they know that we'll be honest and communicate clearly and hold space for ourselves, and therefore hold space for them to be honest and genuine and authentic and be themselves, and hold space for them to be free. And you can create a reality of peace together. So I'm like a little fetus baby right now with polyamory, and it's been quite a challenging experience in its own right. I wouldn't say it's been more challenging than monogamy at all. Monogamy was really challenging. It's very, very difficult to not fall into codependent patterns, which are miserable, while in survival mode in monogamy. And so that's why I wanted to not repeat that, and I wanted to let myself explore and expand and experience having more than one partner, and what that's like, and how to do that in a healthy way. And there is, like I said, so many different ways to execute polyamory. And so I've had three serious different partnerships, and then a casual, less serious partnership within the last, October. I think it's almost been 10 months now of practicing this and learning this, and it's been actually really amazing. I also, being Christian, was suppressed, oppressed, queer, bisexual my whole life. So I've maybe I should say I'll say it really fast, and then I'll talk about it more in my next video. So it'll be like a little cliffhanger for you. But I was had been working on myself very intensely for a few years at this point. Was dating somebody last October for just a few months, really liked them. It was a guy, and I kept having these dreams, and I kept having it come up in my processes and my meditations that I finally needed to expand and explore my sexuality. I had known at this point for 2 years that I was bisexual, for sure, knew it in my heart, knew it in my gut, my intuition that I was bisexual, but I'd never been with a woman. I never explored it. I was really scared of it because I was so shamed and taught that it was wrong and not acceptable and not okay, and which is what oppression is. Oppression is when we're programmed or ingrained with the belief system in whatever way or form that who we inherently are, our most authentic self, is wrong or bad, which causes shame. Shame is that I'm wrong or bad inherently in who I am, in my most authentic being, which we then try to overcompensate for and cope with the rest of our lives until we are able to clearly see and accept that part of ourselves. So at this point, I started realizing in high school that maybe I was bisexual, but I was so scared I didn't even let myself think about it, honestly, for more than a few seconds. And then throughout my first marriage, I was like, ooh, maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm bisexual. I had a lot of sexual trauma in that marriage. And then I really wanted to explore it, but I couldn't even get myself to think about it again still throughout my year of being single. And then when I went through my second marriage, I just suppressed it. And then towards the end, I was like, we talked about maybe having an open relationship. I was going to explore it, but I didn't. Went through our divorce, just needed to focus on my healing. I couldn't even think about it really, but at that point I knew for sure that I was, and I just focused on my healing and studying and learning behavioral psychology and emotional health and how we create our reality, manifestation, quantum physics, and I really just dove into that for a while. And then here I am in this relationship with this guy again. I'm like, well, it was my first relationship after my marriage. It was a year and a half later. And I was like getting serious with this guy, and that scared me because I hadn't explored this part of myself. So we talked about it, and he was like, Jess, I want to you need to be free. You need to be able to explore this. And he was really amazing in that way at first. So he's like, if you go to that spiritual retreat you're going to and you meet someone, then let yourself have an open heart, an open mind, and let it happen and just see what happens. So I did. I met a woman, and we were intimate, and she and I had this deep emotional connection and intellectual connection. She was witty, she was intelligent and funny and beautiful to me, and I'd never been with a woman before, and we had this amazing chemistry and connection. And so when we were intimate, I was just like blown away. Like I just was like, what is this? Like what? And I just fell in love with her. I didn't expect it. I had no idea that I could be in love with a woman. I thought I was just sexually attracted to women. So I ended up really like falling in love with her pretty quickly. Well, I would say infatuation at first, and then it developed into love. But we started dating, and I, talked to my partner, my male partner, about it. I'm not going to say anyone's names on here, by the way. So, kept dating my male partner, and we just discussed the situation that now I'm kind of loving two people at one time. Like, what does this mean? Is this bad? Is this wrong? Like, we had kind of had this open relationship. He had given me permission to explore this, but here we were like in this new situation. And that's when I read the book More Than Two. So if this is something you're experiencing, I recommend the book More Than Two. And I don't remember the author's names, but if you Google that, you'll find it. That book changed my life. I would just listen to these on Audible, and it's very, very pleasant, easy read. And it's very neutral, very supported and backed by psychology. And they are very insistent on saying, like, polyamory isn't for everyone. This isn't the only best way to execute a relationship or a lifestyle. Monogamy is also wonderful, but just know that if you are naturally more polyamorous, there's nothing wrong with you and you're not bad. And there's an ethical way to live that lifestyle. And so I then realized that I could love two people at one time. I could love more than one person at one time. And that was very different for me with the way I was raised. Obviously, I was very monogamous to have been married twice by such a young age. I was not scared of commitment at all. But I wanted to expand the way I was living and perceiving my reality. So I not only expanded my sexuality in like who I was willing to let myself connect to and letting myself connect to women now, but like my lifestyle, like polyamory, was so different, and so it was really, really intense. At the exact same time, I opened up, I'll get into this later as well. I'm gonna have to take notes on like everything I'm saying. I'm gonna get to later. But I like opened up my heart portal, and I had like a Kundalini awakening, and my third eye was just like, and my crown chakra was like, and I just tapped into this higher dimension, and I had the most insane spiritual experience I'd ever experienced at this retreat. It was in September of last year, which is the day before I connected to my woman partner. And so that was the state of mind I was in. That was the state of consciousness I was in, was this very open heart. I connected to love for the first time, beyond attachment, beyond desire, but genuine love for people. And to me, love means being able to hold space for yourself to just be, to be authentic, and accepting yourself fully, and then therefore holding space for others to see them, to let them express themselves and be themselves completely authentically, and vice versa, allowing them to hold space for you and being vulnerable in your expression so they can see you clearly and accept you. And that's when you experience the most beautiful sensation of love, and you tap into the state of consciousness of love. And so I began to experience this with her over the months. My male partner at the time, we tried to have a triad, which is like a 3-person relationship, a throuple. And he realized it wasn't what he wanted. It didn't resonate with him, and he wanted to practice monogamy. But at this point, I knew I wanted to explore and expand and be able to date women and see if this resonated with me long term, if I could live my life with a woman partner, or I had never even conceptualized that before this point. I had a belief system that I needed a man to be whole and complete, because that was what I was ingrained with, was that I have to have a man to be one with. I am a half, he's a half, together we have to be one to be whole. And so to diffuse that belief system and let that go was really scary and intense. And to even conceptualize the idea of being with a woman partner for the rest of my life, just a woman partner, if I were to have chosen that, or be with a woman and a man as a throuple, or practice more solo polyamory, or whatever I would choose, but that I was expanding into this new perception of relationships and love and expression of love, was just like, whoa, a pivotal turn in my reality. And it was amazing. It was so freeing. It was the most freeing thing I'd ever experienced. Though challenging, it was freeing. And so that was when me and my woman partner began to dive deeper into our relationship, and we went through a lot of our own challenges, but there was throughout time this respect and honor for ourselves, and like to communicate through things and communicate about things with more neutrality versus victim. This is what we strive for. It's still challenging, and it really provoked, like, because of who I am, I'm like a prism. I'm always striving to grow. I'm always striving to evolve. My whole life purpose is to evolve and grow and so that I can just be and be peaceful. And when I am growing and expanding in ways that I feel limited or blocked or not aligned, is when I align with myself, and then I experience this authentic expression and then manifestation with that and alignment with that, and I feel peace and I can feel it. I know when I'm creating that, I can feel it. And so there was areas in my life where I wasn't doing that quite yet, and there was areas in my life that I was, and I was feeling those happen, and it was this really powerful shift. So I then attracted a different male partner like a month or so later, and it was pretty quick after, and so that was kind of intense, and I was like trying to not like go into it too deeply at first, and we were trying to connect, but he was like just the most beautiful soul, and we connected very naturally and very intensely. We'd already known each other, but we connected more romantically at this point. And so then I found myself in this new tryout situation and had to navigate that and process that and go through a lot of experiences to work through that and find the best way to execute it. And then that was when COVID hit the world, hit Utah. There was earthquakes in Utah. It was crazy times. So for the next 4 months was just growing, processing, and I'll share all the details. Well, maybe not all the details, but I'll share a lot of info and experiences on that and what we learned about polyamory and about relationships and love in another video. I'll also be sharing more about processing skills and fitness. I'm also a fitness coach. Like, that's one of my main things, fitness flow. And I own my company is Emotional Health Processing and Fitness Flow Education. And I'm working on a book right now, and my program was launched in January, because before that I was just doing individual sessions for a while and online stuff. And so throughout all of this, not only was I navigating coming out as queer and exploring my bisexuality, but also polyamory and launching and growing my business by myself completely, put my big girl pants as a business owner and expanded and scaled my business, took it to the next level during this time. So it has been a very intense last year. Oh my gosh, that is why I have not shared very much on my Instagram. Those of you who have been loyally following me for 5+ years, this is my little video to explain it all to you. I love you, and thank you for being patient and loving and supportive. Even though I've not shared very many details on you, I've just shared random things here and there, and people are like, what's happening? So these videos will be me sharing all of it, and I'll be sharing about my beliefs, or my lifestyle with nutrition and my approach in my relationship with food and movement and meditation and breath work and all of these things. So this is it, my friends. This is an exciting shift in time in life for everyone, and for me especially, I feel. So I love you. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you, and I can't wait to share more. Subscribe if you want to follow everything. You want to learn all of these things. You want to learn more about these adventures of mine. Bye.